wanted to say good morning to everyone and thank you for joining us for our Communicating with Impact in a Virtual World webinar with Andrew. And thank you, Andrew, for facilitating this session for us. Andrew has, for a long time, been facilitating our Brilliant Communication program, and the feedback we get from that program is amazing every time. So I know that everyone that's joined us this morning will get a lot from your session. I just wanted to remind you all very quickly about a couple of other events that we have coming up this week. So I don't know if anyone is like me and struggling to get up the stairs without getting panted out. We are doing a HIT class on Thursday. So do come along to that. That'll be at 6 o'clock, and that's with One Element. It should be good fun. It doesn't matter what level you are in fitness. It's just a good excuse to get, a little bit of exercise in the day. And we will also be doing our In Conversation with Pamela Valentine again on Thursday. So there's some great guests there. There's Rosemary Stalker, Chair of Invest NI, Judith Totten, MBE, and Managing Director of Upstream, and she's also on the board of Invest NI, and Gary McDonald, who is the business editor for the Irish News. So if anyone was involved with the In Conversation with Pamela the other week, it was great fun. There was plenty of laughs. The conversations were hilarious, but it was also a good kind of, local conversation chat show effectively. So it should be good fun, and it'll be on our Facebook Live as well. And our mentoring also returns this Friday. So we are now full for mentees, but we do always look for more mentors. So if you do want to support other women, within their career and just, to be there for someone else, do get in touch with me, because we're always looking for more mentors. So email me, it's nikki@womaninbusinessni.com. And finally, we do encourage you to send us through lots of questions during the webinar. I'll be keeping an eye on those. So you'll see at the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A section. So if you've got any questions during the session, just fire your question in there, and then I'll let Andrew know some of the questions that we have towards the end of the session today. But I hope you enjoy, and thank you so much again, Andrew.
No problem. Listen, thank you so much, Nikki. Wherever you are watching in from today, if you're still in your beds, if you are on your sofa, or if you've been up since the crack of dawn trying to get stuff done, you're very welcome. It is lovely to be with you. And for me, this is the new normal. In our business, we have had to pivot very quickly. A couple of months ago, we were in the same position as you guys, probably most of you were. We had this incredible tsunami of change just hit us. And today what I want to do is I want to try to balance for you the kind of some learning, some very practical stuff, and to help you to be more impactful in your communication in this new virtual online world, which, to be honest, for some of us, we were on the fringes of this in our business. So these are some of the people that we've worked with over the last sort of 18 months. And when some of these businesses are geographically spread, right, and some of them are all over the place, so we were sort of dipping our toe in to online learning and virtual delivery, but we were chucked right in at the deep end about 2 months ago, and we thought we were drowning for about a day and a half, and then all of a sudden we popped up at the surface, and we've kind of got into a really good rhythm of what it means to do business in an online world. And that means every bit of business. So why don't we, if we could start our first poll this morning, what I'd like to do just to check in with you guys is find out where you're coming from. So if we could run our first poll, please. What I want to know is, could you just let us know very quickly what kind of business you're operating in this morning? So, because I might be able to speak into different bits, different sectors. That would be really good. So there you go. You should see your poll now on the screen. And let me see. I'll look forward to seeing the results coming up soon. All you have to do is click one and fire it up for us. And then, so here we go. Here's our results. So what we can see is predominantly this morning, well, we've got a good mix. But if we look at over 50% are small business owners, entrepreneurs, and small and medium-sized businesses. The rest of you, it's great. 20%. Okay. So what we have is a good mix this morning. And so what that tells me is that there are different challenges for those who are, say, small business owners or entrepreneurs, which is about getting business, about maintaining business, about pivoting and winning clients, keeping your clients happy, and making sure that you can continue business into this next few months. Because the truth is, we just don't know how long we're going to be operating like this. What is this, the new normal, or is it going to be different in weeks and months to come? Well, actually, nobody knows. It's just the way that it is. For those of you in a bigger corporate setting, you're probably drowning. Our bigger corporate clients have us drowning at the minute in Zoom meetings, as my grandmother used to say, up to the oxters. There's a good Belfast expression for you. Just absolutely drowning. Meetingitis. I think I've spent more time looking at a screen in the last few months than I've probably done cumulatively for the rest of my life. And everyone wants a meeting. It beats work, as I say. If you don't want to do any work, just have a good meeting. And so this is the challenge that we have. And in the middle of it all, here are you and me, whether we are trying to influence our colleagues in the corporate setting, trying to influence our teams remotely and virtually, trying to keep our heads above water, folks, and keep the business running. I want you to listen to me today, because what I'm going to tell you is a lot of common sense. It's a lot of what we're putting into practice ourselves, but also the problem that we have is that common sense is not common practice. And oftentimes when things are highlighted to us, we go, yeah, it makes sense. But what I'm seeing time and time again on the screens is that people are not, doing the basics very well. And so I hope that's going to be good. Here's how you can help me this morning. Every now and again, if you are enjoying this, drop me a wee message. See on the chat there, just say, yep, thumbs up. I might even ask you to do a thumbs up just to make sure that you haven't disappeared off to watch Judge Rinder or whatever's on at this time of the morning. Escape to the Sun, place in the country, whatever it is, just in case your kids aren't wrecking the house if you have them, which has happened a few times. And okay, and so thank you, Claire Bain, all good, perfect. So let's get cracking into it. What I'd like to do first and foremost, before we just get into the detail today, is I just want to check in. I do this at the start of every session, and I'm just going to run one more poll because I want to take our temperature this morning as to how we're actually doing. Because this is going to be really important. I'm going to bring this point out later on when it comes to looking at being an impactful presenter. But if we could run the second poll there, please, folks. Can you answer this honestly? This is anonymous. But I'd like to know, just at this stage, how you're doing in lockdown. And this is an important point because I want to bring it in later on. So it just takes a couple of minutes for everybody's results to get in. And as soon as it's in, we'll have it broadcast. Kind of feel like you need a drum roll at this stage, don't you? Just to see how we're all doing. Are we ready to go there? Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, so a few of us not doing so well. Okay, so pretty evenly split. Good. I'm in a way of working and quite enjoying it. Brilliant. That's excellent. And okay, but I'd like to be back to normal. What we've seen over all of our client base is that actually we are on the upward trend of people going, this is kind of normal now. So rather than us coping around the world, trying to cope with the world around us, now we are adapting to what is going on in the world. And so that's what I want to speak into you about today, because this is what it looks like, folks. This is what our world is going to be like. And today what I want to talk about is you. And I want to talk about you. Good morning, Michaela. I want to talk about you and how you are going to have impact, right? All men. Could be. That's because they're really rubbish at it, Roseanne, okay? Everything else is a woman. Don't hang me for it. I was just trying to look at bad examples of Zoom, all right? Now, what's happening is your world has turned into this. So whilst we had a lot of opportunity for the most of us to look at the whites of the eyes and look at what's going on as we can deal with each other and communicate with each other on a daily basis, we are now very geographically spread and our networks have become much wider. And the network widening out and the lack of human contact is presenting lots of challenges in terms of getting business done. Now, here's what I want to say to you, and I'm going to rattle through this really quick. I'm going to do this really fast and hope that you can get the big ideas and the big concepts, and a few really good takeaways. But this is the challenge that we have. But what I want to do today is help you to get back to basics and help you get back to what is doing the simple things and doing them really well. A lot of time in our business, we work with my colleagues and I work with some like elite sport. So, rugby people and all the rest of it. And they have this mantra: work really hard to make your thinking really simple. Work really hard to make your thinking really simple. And oftentimes when there is complexity and ambiguity all around us, the best thing that we can do for ourselves is to focus and to make things as clear. I mean, Boris got a hammer, didn't he, around clarity the other night, that people like clarity. They like it clear. And you've got to work really hard in complex times to make things simple. Now, what I would say to you is this is a great quote, is that if you understand the real world, right? Because in one sense, this virtual world is inhuman. It's not how we were designed. We were designed for connection, and we were designed to, in that interaction, to do business, to do life, and all the rest of it. But if you understand the real world and how that looks and sounds, then it's going to be much easier to create that in a virtual setting, said John Dexter. And I think this is absolutely right. So I want to just refresh your memory. Some of you, this might be slightly new, but remember, work really hard to make your thinking simple. Because if you can understand the dynamic, because communication is human, when it's put through the medium of computers and the internet and learning management systems and all the rest of it, we lose that which is essentially the thing that is the most important, which is human connection. But I'm going to show you today how to do that and how to build that and mitigate around the virtual world. For those of you who don't know, the root of the word communication is communis. It's a Latin word. I bought a Latin dictionary. I love etymology, the study of words. Don't judge me, bit of a geek, right? And I bought this Latin dictionary for a £5, and I left it sitting on our dining room table. And my son, who's now 16, and he walked through the dining room one day and he picked it up. And he said, "What's that?" Like, just... I said, I thought it was a request for information. How wrong was I? It was, he was just having fun. And I said, nothing wrong with being a geek. Thank you. All the geeks unite, right? And so I said, it's a Latin dictionary. And he just looked at me without any hint of irony and just went, "You are such a weirdo." And I should have chastised him, but I just laughed. I thought, no, you're probably right, son. But the reason why I bought it is I wanted to get to the heart of something. Sometimes to figure out how to do it well, you've got to get to the heart of it. And so communication means to make common or to get in common. Communication is not about giving out information. A guy called Sidney Harris says that information and communication are often used interchangeably, right? But they signify very different things. Information simply means giving out, but communication means getting through. And we've got to figure out how to get through. How does it work in the real world? And then how do we apply that virtually? Well, this is your brain, folks, all right? This is what you've got going on between those ears of you. And every time this brain is, whether it's in a virtual world or in the real world, when it meets someone or is talking to someone or is engaging with someone, there's a number of things that go on. In fact, here's the process. The process of communication looks like this. Your first response, okay, is always emotional. Now, you need to think about this. Even online, our first response as human beings, because we're wired this way, or when our brains are scanning the world, we always look for an emotional connection first. That's the thing that drives our behavior. That's the thing that changes how we operate. That's the things, if you're a small business owner, it will not be what you do and how you do it that will be the primary driver of clients giving you business. It will be, honestly, how they feel about what you do and what it means to them. Because we are hardwired as human beings for emotion first. Very quickly, though, we have a cognitive appraisal after we feel something. That cognitive appraisal is our brain trying to figure out what we're thinking, what we're feeling rather. And then once we've done that, we then have a choice to make. So if you're in business today or if you're managing a team remotely, let me make it perfectly clear for you. That's why I just checked in with you guys at the start, okay? Show me your favorite TV show. What have you been doing? A bit of chat, because there's something there that warms us before we get into the meat of it. There's something there that connects us and helps us to drop our guard a little bit and talk or connect in a way which is more human, because that is one of the big things that we're going to see is missing in the virtual world. But this is what happens every time. Something happens, you feel it, you think it, and then you behave. And this is what we need to understand how we're going to apply that virtually. Everybody doing okay so far? Just give me a thumbs up, folks, and say, hey, ladies, we're all good. And let's see. Or have you all fallen asleep already? Brilliant. Thank you, Jordan. You're first in. You win a prize. Thumbs up. Thank you. Brilliant. Okay, so here's what happened. And many of you will normally have heard this. This is a guy called Albert Morabian. And in the real world, what he says is that in getting in common with people, what are the drivers, the human drivers that make me want to choose you? Like in the world, why would I choose your business if you're two businesses offering broadly the same package at the same price in the same market? Why would I choose one over the other? Well, it comes down to us as people. And one of the things is that Morabian back in the 60s, he worked out that in human communication, these three things are always in play and they are weighted differently. And essentially body language, that's, everything you see from facial expression, gesture, smiles, movement, posture, is the predominant driver of how we connect with people. And then it's not your words, actually, it's what's called paraverbal or paralinguistic communication. This is your tone of voice, it's the rhythm, the emphasis, the speed, and the pitch of how you say the words. And that drives over 90% of how we feel about people when we deal with them. Over 90% of it is this, all right? Now, here's the problem though. When it comes to a virtual world, that goes out the window. Okay, so here is the problem that we have. We have the problem that as human beings, we haven't changed. Just because our external world has changed, it doesn't mean that our internal world has changed. Okay, so how are we going to do it? How are we going to stay essentially human? Because communication is about human connection. And when we connect as human beings, then it's much easier to deliver our product, services, strategy, vision, future. But how do we do that in this virtual world? Well, here's what I'm going to tell you today. What you do and how you do it is secondary to why you do something, says Simon Sinek. And so I'm going to show you some things today. I'm going to get very practical with you. It's going to seem like very much like common sense, but I would love to see it as common practice for you. And one of the things I want you to understand before I give you here's the tips and tricks, is I want you to understand why those matter. This is the limbic, this is the emotional response. So there are broadly 4 things that you need to think about that you need to overcome. All right. Here is the problem with virtual communication, and here's where your impact drops. Number 1, it's a lack of emotion. Now, emotions that come naturally in face-to-face communication, they're almost non-existent in virtual communication. I say this, like every face-to-face communication is almost 2 simultaneous conversation. There's the content, it's what you say, and then there's that 90%, it's how you say it. Both are very essential, but they're very different. Now, when you take the emotion, we either get bored, we get distracted, or worse even still. Now, we're wired for emotional connection. Emotion is a vital part of communication, and we base our decisions on emotion. When we remove that, it's going to be very, very difficult. And the virtual space, the way that it's set up, makes it very difficult to conduct human business in the way that we've been normally doing it. We think that in one way it's convenient, it's cost effective, and it's much more efficient, but actually it removes the primary driver of you communicating well, which is emotion. But I'm going to show you how to build it in. The second thing is a lack of empathy. Now, empathy is one of those hackneyed words, isn't it? But the virtual world robs us of closeness. And it's what happens is in a virtual world, you can often find that people behave differently. People pick things up differently. People are more likely actually to misread what you're saying. We take no account of the fact of what is going on around the world. If you sit in an office with somebody or you're going to meet a client, when you walk in, you pick up the vibe of what's going on, but we don't do that when we're in this kind of world. And that can cause big issues for us because that lack of empathy actually is something that we need to overcome. If you can possibly, there's 4 things that I would say that your online presence, in order to build empathy, there's 4 things you need to think about. Number 1 is authenticity. Be yourself, right? Clarity is the second thing. Be very comprehensive and clear, and be consistent. Those are the 4 things that our story, if you like, has to tell in order for us to be to build empathy in that online world. Okay, is that all good? All good so far, folks? Yes, brilliant. All right, give me a thumbs up. Just say, yes, Andrew, I am with you, because I'm rattling so fast here. The third big problem in an online world, thank you, is the lack of feedback. So one of the things about doing this, because here's me saying, give me some feedback, give me a thumbs up. One of the things that I have found in doing lots of these meetings and delivering actually most of our programs in a virtual setting is the lack of feedback can be very it's like very disconcerting. Now, one of the things in the real world, there's two kinds of feedback. The first, it's implicit and explicit. So implicit feedback is all the non-verbal sounds, facial expressions, touches, body language, everything that goes on with conversation. Explicit conversation is the straightforward, almost like unvarnished communication that we get from other people. And in the real world, it's a mix of the two. But in the virtual world, the implicit is almost non-existent. So what happens in the real world is implicit and explicit work together, and they can either soften the tough messages or they can soften the harsh messages. But when you remove the implicit feedback from your communication, it's I kind of go, that's why we have all these misunderstandings, confusion, and people not being able to land their pitch, as an example. And so if I just, for the purposes of time, I'm going to go quickly. There's also an issue around lack of communication and lack of ability to absolutely, gain commitment from people in an online world. I've had occasions, I was doing something recently, actually this week, and do you know what happened? There was a woman sitting, and it was a husband and wife team, and they were sitting, and it was part of a wider team, but they both sat together eating their dinner while I was presenting, all right? And I was thinking, I don't know how to, and when I mean eating their dinner, their laptop at the table, and they were sitting, munching away like this. It looked delicious, by the way. I almost wanted to ask them what it was, but there's 20 other people on the call. And I just thought to myself, people have no clue in terms of what do you think I am seeing here when I see you? And no, seriously, Roseanne, full dinner, salt, pepper, pouring wine, and conversing as I was talking to them. I was thinking, right, I don't think there's a big commitment here to what I'm talking about. And what happens is these now I'm giving you that example because I just blattered on regardless, thinking, well, the other people are listening. But what happens is that lack of feedback can be very difficult. It throws us. And then what we do is we look at what's going on in people's worlds. You spend most of your time on Zoom, let's be honest, looking at other people's houses and having a wee look behind them to go, nice wallpaper. Look at that. Oh, I wouldn't have had that. I wouldn't put that there. Oh, that photo's terrible. Let's be honest, there's tons of distractions and hard to garner feedback. So in the virtual world, this is what's going on. So what have I said to you today? To have impact, what you need to understand is that these are the biggest issues, because in any kind of communication, you have to be very distracting. You have to take what is human in the real world, and then you have to translate that into a virtual world. And if you can do that, virtually you will have greater impact, because if somebody's sitting on the other side of the screen, it doesn't change the fact that they are essentially human. The way that we've operated for thousands of years has not changed. We've just got to do it differently. So let's go. So what are our strategies? What are our strategies around this? What will be our communication strategies? I'm going to give you 3 things which I think are super important, and then I'm going to give you a very practical list of how you can do these video calls better. The first thing is eye contact. Now, this morning I am looking at my screen, which is a camera, which is down here. Okay, so normally when we're on these when we're on these calls, okay. Well, let me tell you the science of it. About 30% of your conversation with anybody, okay, it needs to be 30% of that time needs to be spent in eye contact with them. And that's what psychologists call deeming the conversation fit for purpose. Now, to establish, though, that's just fit for purpose, that's baseline. But to establish a trust and rapport online, that goes to 60 or 70% of the time. Now, what's of the conversation needs to be eye contact. Now, what's very interesting for me is that most people, when they're on these calls, look at themselves. Because you sit there and you go, oh, here, I should, for me, I go, I should breathe my tummy in a wee bit. Or, oh, my hair's looking good. My wife cut my hair, and you can see that there. First time she's ever cut hair, and she did it with scissors in one hand, a glass of wine in the other, and we had a laugh. We did. And but I'm only showing you the front because the back of it is an absolute dog's dinner. Thank you, Christine. It's not bad, is it? It's don't be telling her that, because let me tell you, you don't want to see the back. I've got clumps where she just, third glass of wine in, it just got a wee bit messy. But about 60 to 70% of the time, you need to be not looking at yourself. You need to be looking right down the camera, right down the absolute lens, and you need to hold that gaze. It's incredibly tempting to look at the face on the screen for much of the time and think that that's making eye contact. It is not. Your eye contact is made, number one, by looking down the lens. So sometimes I've said to people, stick a Post-it note, or an arrow near the lens to keep reminding you that when you're speaking, this is where you need to be looking. It takes practice, but it will pay you dividends, let me tell you that. So number one is work really hard to stop. You're all gorgeous, you're all lovely, your houses look perfect. Stop looking at yourselves and engage right down the lens, because eye contact, even virtually, builds the connection. We don't want people sitting back, looking around with crazy stuff going on behind them. Get yourself into a quiet space. Get yourself into a place where you can eyeball the lens, and when you're speaking, make sure it's right down there. The second thing is vocal variety. Now, this is really important. Remember, nearly 40% in the real world, okay? When 40% in the real world is about your, not what you say, but how you say it, paraverbal or paralinguistic, rhythm, tone, emphasis, speed, and pitch, the big five of vocal variety. When you like if you're in person and you give a stand-up presentation, people can see your entire person. So therefore, they see it all. They see the facial expression, the body language. They see the gesture. They see all of that. But when you're on camera, they don't. So what does that mean? It places greater emphasis on your voice. So what you have to do is you have to learn to vary your pitch. You have to vary your pace. You have to change your volume. And when you do that, it will help you with those four things that I said earlier on about authenticity, the ability to emphasize key points, the ability to roll into authority when you need to have it. Now, what I'm going to say, ladies, is it takes some of us to step up. There are two things that I think are common to every one of us. The first thing is this: we like to be approved of. We have a fear of being rejected, and we have a bit of an approval addiction. And so what I would encourage you is, in a virtual world, almost step it up. Almost say to yourself, when I get onto this call, I'm going to have to be aware of what it's like to be on the other side of me, and ask myself the question, how engaging do I think I am if I was to have to listen to me today? Because it requires an investment of energy. It requires an investment of commitment, particularly with your voice, because with your voice, you have to compensate for all the other bits of communication that get lost. This is why even this morning, normally when we do this, we have a wee intern that works with us. I'm in my office all by myself today, which is actually quite nice. It was quite nice. Can I just tell the truth for a wee moment? Authenticity. Leaving the house this morning with the 3 kids doing homeschooling, I just breathed a wee sigh of relief and thought, thank God, I'm going to work. It's great. And but here I am on my own, all right? And here I am, trying to, give you the opportunity to see a little bit more of me. We normally have cameras on us in our office when we do this, but I'm on my own, so I can't operate everything. But sit back a bit. Let people see your hands so you can gesture. We don't want all this. People who sit with the laptops right down and they're looking straight up your nose, okay? That's not a good look, all right? And what we don't want is so what we want to do, I'll come to the real part of the stuff in a minute, but what we want to do is be able to sit back, because you have to be able, with your voice, and particularly with your gestures, is to compensate for that virtual difference. Now, one of the things that, as I would say, is, if you're delighted, sound delighted. If you're optimistic, sound optimistic. If you're concerned, then sound concerned. It'll be much easier for your people on the other side of you to correctly interpret what you're trying to say, okay? So good eye contact and vocal variety. What we're doing is we're looking at that real world, 90%, and we're starting to bring it in to the virtual world. The other thing we want to do is we want to speak from the heart. This is really interesting. Now, this is about impactful communication, right? So what I say is this: all meaningful communication elicits emotion. Has to. Like, I want to buy from you. I want to do what you say to me. I want you to be able to, follow my leading here. Whatever it is, whatever it looks like. And one of the things I would say is this: is take the opportunity when you're online. I've encouraged all of our clients and all of the managers that we work with and the leaders that we work with is it takes the quickest way that you'll bond with people virtually is to start every conversation, and I mean every conversation, with not what are we going to do, but how are we going to do it. So today, because I don't know what the numbers are today, but there's probably a few people on this call. I can't do it individually, so we can do a poll. Just check in with me and let me know how you're doing. Even the ability for somebody to go, I'm not doing so good, or actually I'm doing pretty good, is a bond builder. And it takes vulnerability. 70 people, wow, okay, hi. It takes vulnerability and courage, but never underestimate, ladies, okay? The power of just a quick story, a sincere story, okay? Not just making it up, a compliment, an expression of gratitude. I would say if you can endeavor to start every interaction online with something of that kind, what will happen is it helps foster a positive spirit, and it helps other people, you know, to lighten up, to loosen up, and to feel connected personally before you have to do the delivery around what needs to be said. People, you know, I think, you know, is it Maya Angelou? She said this. She said that people, you know, will soon forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. Even more so, impacting that way, for some of us, we need to step into that space. I dealt with someone recently, and they're from the US, and culturally they're just like on the call, boom, 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 get it done. And I was facilitating, it was senior leadership group, and I was facilitating with them, and I had to stop the director. He was a man, and I said, you know, can we just check in on each other? Because I was looking at his team and thinking, half these people are really struggling. They're not doing good. They're not doing well. So why don't we just stop for a moment and actually check in? And actually, I was doing some coaching afterwards with them, and I said, you know, right now, because you're separated, what you need to do is just make sure everyone's okay before you get into the message, because even more important than a virtual world. So is that okay? Eye contact, vocal variety, and speak from your heart is probably the way I'd put it. You know, this is the ground rules before we get super practical. Now, I want to make something very practical for you. If we're all still doing good, give me a big thumbs up. Let me just check in, because I'm going to give you a really cool strategy here to help you with how people are thinking. Yes, yes, Roseanne, thank you. That's a double yes, so I'm hoping that's good. Brilliant, super. I'm glad you're enjoying it. Let's go. So how are you going to communicate online and do it really well? I'm going to give you 4 things to think about. That's all 4s and 3s. And if we're in the room, I'll be able to unpack it a little bit. Let me just have a wee drink of wine here. Hold on. It's better. And I'm joking. For anyone who joined late, I'm actually joking. So let me tell you very quickly, in the next 12 minutes before we stop for Q&A, I'm going to give you 4 things that will really help your online communication by thinking about how people think. Okay. The human brain, I showed you earlier on, only works in 4 ways when it comes to thinking. This is called whole brain thinking, and it's one of the most powerful tools today, and becoming increasingly powerful in a world of diversity, inclusion, and cognitive diversity. For those of you who are interested, read a book called Rebel Ideas by a guy called Matt Syed, and because he is looking at, you know, actually diversity is more important than intelligence when it comes to high-performing teams. I'm just going to drop that bombshell, and you can go and figure it out. But the brain works in 4 ways. So people on the other side of your screen synthesize information and receive information in one of 4 ways. And what we can do is we can be really smart and speak to people virtually, touching on each of the areas, okay? That the way people, now this is not personality, this is thinking style. Personality is fixed. It doesn't normally change outside of major life events, but thinking is flexible, and we can learn to think differently, and thinking is the root of every decision that we make. All right. So diversity is absolutely key. And actually cognitive diversity, according to the academics, would say that cognitive diversity is the final frontier of diversity. And it's really interesting, but I am super keen on this stuff. Now you can measure it. I don't want to go into that now because I don't have time, but essentially what we have is on the upper left of the brain. Now this is what's called an engineering approximation for how the brain works. Okay. So on the top left, what we have is cold, logical, rational thinking. Just give me the facts. Don't give me the fluff. What are we talking about? What does it mean? And you know, take all the other stuff away. These people tend to be quite quantitative. They can be quite financial, but all they want to know is there's no emotion in this bit. This is just about show me the facts. In the upper right, we have what, in that yellow segment, what we have is what is called the why space. So if the top left is what are we talking about, the top right is why. Why is the ability to think, to create, to be, to synthesize lots of ideas. The people, you probably have them in your own work. The people when they sit in the meetings and they go, here, what about? And then you get the people who have a predominant preference in the top left going, oh, that'll never work. Sure, it's not even right. And these people are the dreamers, or they're full of ideas or whatever. But that's a really important part. It's called future intelligence, actually. And it's super critical when it comes to building a diversity strategy for your business. When we go to the lower right, what we have are people who are very, what we call emotional intelligence, or what we have is relational intelligence. So these people are very empathetic. They deal with the world around them primarily based on how does it affect people? How does it affect my team? They're very interpersonal, expressive, normally quite good in those. They emotional in the sense of not, whoa, but emotional in the sense of I link what we're doing to how it impacts on the people. And then there's the people on the lower left who do my head in. In fact, they do my bobbing. My wife is one of these. We've been married for 23 years, right? We got married when we were 10. You're trying to work out how old I am. And she is the ultimate planner. She has my brilliant Christina White. Grit and Grace is brilliant and delves into this. Big shout out for Grit and Grace. All right. So in the lower left, what we have is the people who are what's the plan? Is it sequenced? Is it detailed? Is it planned? Now, how do you it's not like what is it, but how are we going to do it? These are the people who sit in the meeting and go, that'll never work because you haven't thought of this. And they drive me nuts because I'd be very much on the upper right. But let me tell you quickly how you do this when you're presenting and you want to have impact. Because I don't care whether you are from Tandragee or Timbuktu, whether you're from Ballycastle or Belize, it doesn't matter. The human brain is pretty much unchanged in 50,000 years, and its view of the world, whether in real life or in virtual, sees it in these four blocks. So how would you communicate then virtually? Well, if you're preparing, here's your checklist as an example. So if you want to make sure that you're talking into the people on the other side who are very factual people, here's what you could say. Does it use facts? Is it clear? Is it to the point? And is it logical? You just need to think about that to go, is the information, or am I just rambling? Because what will happen is you will give the information in the way that suits you, okay? But that, particularly on the online world, you need to take a step back, look at your information and pivot it for the people on the other side of the screen. And if they are predominantly wired up here, this is the way you need to give them the information. In fact, I'm a whole brain practitioner, the only one in Northern Ireland. And there's only 2 of us in Ireland who are licensed to do this from Herman. And one of the things that we do is we teach you how to do this in the round in every conversation so that you touch every bit of how people receive information. The second thing then is to make sure that you're impacting the people who are more, have a stronger preference, we say, for more creative future intelligence. Is it metaphors? Does it look to the future? Is it conceptually sound? Does it look at the big picture? Now, there are huge levels of detail in this, ladies. I mean, I'm in the very top line, just skimming the surface, but there are huge applications into businesses for this stuff. But here's what I say earlier on. I started earlier on by going, big picture. This is communication. This is the big world. And this is what we're looking at, as an example. Down here, we have the relational intelligence, rather. So this is the bit of building empathy. This is the bit of connection. Am I using my own story? Is it authentic? Is it clear? Is it consistent? Does it acknowledge the emotional stuff of what's going on? We're in lockdown, folks. How are we doing? Let's check in first before we do anything else. Those few moments of conversation will garner great fruit in the conversation for you. Are you using examples from your own experience and your own walk to build that bond? Or are you just getting straight to the chase and trying to get people to do business without any of that? And the last thing then is, does it, for the planners amongst you, the organizers, is it detailed? Is it sequential in order? Is it neat? So there is a whole brain communication chat. What do you think of that? Does that make sense? So if I asked you to pitch your business to me online, okay, now, or to follow up with me as a client about what you're doing for me or potential for new business, and I've been doing this nearly every day in our business, and we are doing a ton of business at the minute, and looking and building out our virtual platform, and new stuff coming in every week. And people say, well, how have you done that? Well, part of the reason why we do it is when we're pitching or when we're looking at our clients, what we do in our online communication is I make sure in every conversation we're building relationship, we're building rapport. But then when I give, like for me, if it's about, we're actually building out Herman platforms for a client at the minute. Okay, one of the things we do is we go, well, it's this is, if we're doing strategy as an example, it's helping them to develop their strategy. We start up upper left and we go, where are you? Over to the top right, where do you want to go? Bottom right, who have you got? Left, how are we going to get there? Does that make sense? And then we build it out. And what we're seeing is greater traction, because if I've got 70 odd people here on this call, predominantly, you're going to pretty much evenly split with a preference to hear information in each one of those areas. So I just make sure I speak into it. All right. Does that make sense? I hope it does. We've got about, we've got about 6 minutes. Shall I get very practical for you? Hopefully this is all good. Let's get super practical. And I want to help you with some very basics. And this is common sense versus common practice. Sorry, I just need the last bit of my wine. This is common sense versus common practice. And hopefully this is going to be one of the things that helps you to garner that great impact. First and foremost, always check in with how people are doing. If any of you are coaches out there, we do executive coaching as well. I employ a few of them. And one of the things that we do, and it's one of the most basic things when you're training as a coach, is you got to check in to go, are we okay today? Is this okay? Is this good? That's really important. And it's going to be one of the first things I would suggest you do at every session. But here they go. I'm going to rattle them off. I'm not going to use slides because we're running out of time. Number one, always use video where possible. So because we lose the non-verbal cues predominantly over video, I'm working really hard to let you see a bit of me and move my hands and hopefully engage you a little bit more. But to make people feel like they're all in the same meeting, where you can, always video. All right. Conference dial-in is fine, but the likes of Zoom here today, or GoToMeetings, or Webinar, or Adobe Connect, what it does is it personalizes the conversation. So always video where it can be done. If you can't do that, always have a dial-in option. Number two, I've seen so many people miss it. Okay, whenever they start, because they don't know how the technology works. Okay, so what I would say is always test your technology in time. Make sure it's working well. Okay. The other thing is make sure faces are visible. If you can see that, so use video and get the faces on there. Number four, stick to the basics. Prior to your conversation, send it out to people. Video conferences are way more effective when people know what the objectives are. Send the pre-reads where they're appropriate so that you're not all doing that online. Use an agenda during the session. This is so basic. Set the meeting ground rules, like mics off, questions at the end. Take breaks. Normally, I would never do an hour session. Every 30 minutes, I say take a break, do something, or we mix it up. And then what you do is you clearly have to outline the next steps. Minimize your presentation length. Online, the science tells us 10 minutes and people need to do something different. Okay? That you need to do something different. So every 10 minutes, take a break, and whether it's go to the bathroom, get a cup of tea, check your kids, have them wreck the house, I use them all. Okay? And so what I would say is this, is as well with your camera, invest a little bit. I've just lit myself up today with a few lights. We use different cameras and all the rest of it. Get into a quiet space. Don't have too many distractions. Don't sit with windows behind you. Have more light on you than there is on the back. That's generally how it works. And then make sure that your camera is at eye level and you're looking straight down it. And if you can do that, I can guarantee you from what I've seen, and that will increase your impact by 60–70%. All right. And so what I want to do is, we are just bang on time. I have fired through so much stuff. Nikki, could you help us with some questions? And whilst we do that, I just need to quickly just check something. So I'm going to disappear from the screen for 1 minute just till I check my power supply. Is that okay? Good.
Super. Yeah, I'm now having to try to do what Andrew's been telling me in the session, but my eyesight's so bad I can't actually see the webcam. So Andrew, you're going to have to give me a tip on that. We have a couple of questions here. So Lucy has said, I often sit the laptop back so that my client can see me to take notes of what is important to them. I feel like then they will feel that there is more gravity to their contribution. Does that work in your opinion?
I think if you have to, what you have to do is you have to be clear at the start. So remember I said about clarity and setting the ground rules. So I said that in the meeting basics, what I said was, prior to the conversation, what you can do, you can set the ground rules up and say, look, if I'm going to take, I will be taking notes. The risk is if you don't do that, when you sit back and you could be doing your shopping list, and you might think, well, of course I wouldn't do that. But what you have to do is you have to make it clear to people what you're doing. You work harder at the things that you would normally take for granted and which would be normal in real life, if you're not. So if I'm sitting back and taking notes, what you have to do is you have to let them know. But bear in mind, remember, in a virtual setting, 60 to 70% of your communication needs that you need to lift your eye contact from 30 to 60 to 70. Now, so 30 is the baseline for the conversation to be classed as okay. 60 to 70% eye contact for trust and rapport to be built. So that's what I would say about that, is just be aware of what it's like on the other side, but 60 to 70% of that time you should be staring down the screen. Okay.
Thank you. And then Laura has said, how do you know which one to gear your presentation towards? That was whenever you were talking about, all the different kind of the brain, whole brain communication.
What we do on that is we do what's called a whole brain workaround. And what we are, if you email me, I can give you some detail on that, but actually you do it every way. And you might think, well, hold on, that would be, my presentation would be like 6 days long. No, it's not. You work really hard to make it simple. And what we ask you to do is, Laura, is we ask you to think about, if I was predominantly, the thing is you have a preference in everyone. You're not one or the other, okay? You're able to do all four. Everyone, personality is fixed, thinking is flexible. That's the big difference between, from a diversity point of view, we have to build cognitive flexibility, advanced cognitive skills. You'll have heard this in the workplace. So innovation, collaboration, all that sort of stuff is based on cognitive diversity. So what that means is you have to touch everyone. So, if I'm doing a 10-minute presentation or a 10-minute pitch, I basically have 2 minutes on each one. All right. Where I work really hard to make my information fit, into each box. So it could be just for the red bit, the story of how it made an impact. So if it's strategy, where are we? Where do you want to go? What people do you have? How are we going to do it? Or you could go, so here's where we are. This is where we'd like to go. This is how we're going to do it. And this is what the impact on you will be. There's a number, but as long as you hit each one, then you're doing a whole brain workaround, and you get the return on investment for that is about 60% versus just having a rattle at it. So if I've got 70 people in the room, I know statistically that you're all pretty much spread around each 4 quadrant. So next one.
Put it on mute, sorry. And Nuala has said, if you're dealing with an audience group of people you've never met, how do you get the right balance and how to present your content to them?
If you're dealing with an audience group you've never met, how do you get the right balance in how you present your content to them? I'm not sure I get the... Nuala, could you maybe help us there with with a bit of clarity in that question? Is it how you physically present it? Is it about what's on the screen? Is it about...
she said you answered. You answered in the last piece, so I think it was about the brain communication. Thank you, Nuala. About dividing the content evenly. Sinead said, any tips for chairing a meeting and making sure everyone gets a chance to contribute? Okay, so when you chair, it is absolutely critical that you do what we call meeting basics. All right. So here's right. Let me deal with Roseanne and Sinead together there, because if you have a chair in a virtual meeting, you basically rule the roost, okay? And you have to be more directive online than what you would normally be. So let me give you an example. We're running this thing at the minute called L&D TV for a number of our clients, and last week we had over 500 people join us from one business
for an hour's webinar like this. And so just to give you an idea, how do we manage that at scale? Well, here's what we do. To deal with the speech interruption and all the rest of it, the ground rules are set. When you join the meeting, mics are off and video is off, okay? If you want to ask a question, use the chat. You can use the chat function or the Q&A if it's on a webinar, okay? We won't have any interruptions, etc. And the ground rules are set out. If you use Zoom, which I think is my favorite tool, actually, we use a number, but this is my favorite. In the waiting room, what you can do is you can put up all the ground rules in the waiting room before you get in there, so that when people are waiting, and what I would say is put them up there and make sure there's absolutely clear. But if you're hosting, if you're chairing the meeting, Sinead, then you have the ability behind the scenes to actually take out everyone's ability to privileges for mic and video so that they can't put it on, and you can do that before the meeting actually starts. But chairing a meeting is absolutely, you send it out beforehand and then you reiterate it at the start, okay? So here's our ground rules. If you've got something to say, what we want you to do is you can either put your hand up and wave, I'll put it into the chat and I'll get to it if it's appropriate. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave the questions to the end, and then we can have 10 minutes discussion around it. It's really important that happens. Okay, it's all about clarity. Actually, it's all about being very clear about what's in, what's out, what's acceptable, what's not, and making that clear. Oh,
super. And Hannah, any tips for dealing with clients remotely in the context of COVID? So, for example, they often they're coming to the call conversation already feeling concerned, emotional, upset.
Okay, this is a really good one, and I told you the idea of doing this today, but I probably too much information. I wanted to get you as much good stuff as possible, right? So what you should do is, particularly, ladies, if I could just say it, I'm not paid by them, but Zoom is brilliant for this. Is the ability, if somebody's very upset, take them into a virtual breakout room and have a conversation with them. What I would say is it's really, really important. And I get with COVID, like I was doing a call recently and I was presenting like this, and I found out that one of my best mates, his grandmother passed away. She had the virus, and he texted me in the middle of it. And I keep my phone on for timing, and I was just like, oh, and I could feel it myself. This was a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, gee whiz. Felt for him, but realizing there was 300 people listening to me, so I had to keep rattling on. So what I learned when I reflected on that for myself, we had a couple of people when we did the poll on some of our clients who went, I am really, really struggling. And so what I did was I said, look, what we'll do is we have an agenda that we need to get through because that's what we have to do. But why don't we just take a step in? So I brought them into a virtual breakout room. It's so simple to do. Just click their name, create a room, put them in. And I just had a quick conversation with them to go, are you okay about this today? If you're not, by all means, please, you can join us again. But you will get nothing done if somebody is in that heightened emotional state. But they run the risk of derailing everything. So what you can do is just take them into the room. This is so simple to do. Quick conversation, figure it out. If they're good to go, remember they won't have their mic on anyway, and their video should be off. Then you can rattle on. Hope that helps. Hire employers. How can you quickly summarize feedback from small breakout groups to keep people's attention? Okay, so what I've done is, depending on the size of the group, generally we have the big webinar stuff going on, but we've also got our stock courses, which are all run virtually now for the foreseeable future. So we have 20 to 25 in the room. So what we do is I break them into even breakout rooms. I pick on one person from each breakout room, and what I ask them to do is what's called cumulative feedback. So if you're asking for feedback on a particular project or where we're at, say it's a status report or an update, I say, so breakout room 1, Andrew, just pick a name, because you know what, it keeps them all on their toes. So if they're watching Judge Rinder, they're in trouble, right? Because they need to be there. And I've never watched Judge Rinder, just somebody said they were watching it, and I was like, who is he, right? But here's the thing. So I say, breakout room 1, Karen, I want you, breakout. And then what I ask them to do is I say, only say something different that adds to the conversation. And let's go to breakout room 2. Nikki, what can you add to what's just been said? And what we do is we just chunk the information as we go through the groups. Generally speaking, you don't have more than 5 groups in a typical meeting anyway. Breakout rooms are just part of the normal package, folks, even on the free one. So basic Zoom packages gives you breakout rooms. You just need to go into your settings on the web browser and enable breakout rooms, but you can use them even on the free version. It's a brilliant tool. How are employers achieving cognitive diversity? Flip me. Will this be the last question? Sorry. How do our employers achieving cognitive diversity at recruitment stage? Well, they're not. That's the bottom line, and they need to be doing it more. There's a number of ways that we can help with that, around helping you to figure out where your team's at and where you're missing. But right now, more employers are getting switched on to it because they realize traditional ways of measuring personality are a wee bit redundant. Like in a volatile, uncertain, complex world, it's a wee bit redundant. So what we need is flexibility, diversity and flexibility in our thinking, which leads to better decision making. Okay, so that's me done. Ladies, lovely to see you this morning. Well, I can't see you, but I hope you've enjoyed that. I've tried my best to give you some information, to get you to think. We're limited in 45 minutes as to what we can do, but it's been my great pleasure. If you need anything from me, it's okay if I put my details on, Nikki?
Yeah.
There we go. That's me. Not a great photo, to be fair, but you know what? It is what it is. That's how you can get in touch with me. And I would love it to, if you need any help, if you need any more info, you just go here, help me with that. Just drop me a line, and I would love to be in touch with you. Over to you, Nikki.
Lots of thanks here, Andrew. Just a lot of people saying thank you. Excellent session, time well spent. Fantastic session. You kept the energy going, really interesting. So a lot of good feedback, and thank you so much, Andrew. I think everyone got so much from it. You're getting all the thank yous coming through, and we should be able to put this online as well. For people catch up on as well. So yeah, just everyone make sure you get Andrew's details there, and thank you for joining us this morning. So that's great. Thanks very much, everybody, and thank you, Andrew.
No problem. Thanks so much, ladies. All the very best.